right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coaches Compass. Again, don't remember what episode it is because we just continue to roll, continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. It's your boy, Coach Coop, my boy Jay, right? He's reporting live from Europe. I'm reporting live now from the United States of America, right? Remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we can continue to have this thing grow and continue to bring on cool guests so you guys can continue to learn from some of the best in the industry. But we got one of the top dogs in the industry right now. We got our boy, Coach Jim, right ahead. He is the head football strength and conditioning coach at the Naval Academy. He has been there now in his second season. Coach Jim comes to the Navy Academy from Kennesaw State, where he served as an assistant athletic director for sports performance and was director of football strength and conditioning. Prior to Kennesaw State, Coach Jim served 3 seasons as an associate director for strength and conditioning at the Citadel, where his responsibilities included coordinating all aspects of the Bulldogs men's basketball and wrestling training programs. Coach Jim also joined the Citadel after spending 2 seasons at Vermont as an assistant strength and conditioning coach, where he worked directly with the men's basketball, men's and women's ice hockey, men's and women's lacrosse, and men's and women's soccer. So, Coach Jim, thank you and welcome to being here with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Thank you for having me on.
So, Coach, quick question. While you were at the Citadel, did you have 2 guys? So 2 guys I went to school with, Jacob Stinson and Dylan Godotto.
Yeah. I haven't talked to those guys since I was there, but yeah, that is a small world and those names scream to me right away. Anybody who goes to that school, 9 out of 10 of those dudes are top dogs, right? They're awesome people. There was a great culture in that weight room, a great culture on the football team. And we were okay when I was there. But the people who carried that thing on had some of the best years of Citadel football. After I had left, it's just great people go to a place like that.
Man, that's crazy because I went to high school with those guys, and those are guys that I grew up with.
That is a small world, man.
And actually played against the Citadel in 2013 when I was at Charlotte. So even smaller of a world.
So no, yeah, we've crossed paths before too because I played at Gardner Webb. And we played you guys, I think my senior year, just my senior year. I think it was at 2016. And then I think it was 2016 or 2017. We had crossed paths when Kennesaw had a pro day there, and I was there. And I remember seeing you there as well. And I remember I've been following you for a while when you were at Kennesaw and would always see like your videos with the guys doing squats and that the gym wear setup that you guys had. But I love the energy that you always brought to those lifts and have the boys in Kennesaw getting after it. It's nice to see you in Navy now.
I love seeing this connection too, going back in the archives. We're finding ways to connect with people we didn't know about, but we cross paths. We know similar people. It's why it's always great to keep your eyes open and meet as many people as you can because you don't know what's going to circle back.
Man, it's small world, especially in this football community. But Coach, what got you super interested in wanting to go down the strength and conditioning field, especially at the collegiate level, and how it's navigated nowadays too? What made you want to do this?
All right, so I'll do my best to make this long story short, but I'll go way back, right? So I attribute me wanting to be a strength coach to seeing Rocky for the first time. Okay, so I watched Rocky. You see him in the early part of that movie. He goes for a run. And he catches a cramp and he limps his broke ass back to his house. And then by the end of the montage, he's sprinting up the library stairs and all that stuff, right? And after I see that movie, I went for a run. And I remember me catching a cramp on Swift Road in Northbridge, Massachusetts, and limping my broke ass back home. And the next day I went for another run and I made it further. I'm like, oh man, this stuff works. So that was kind of my introduction to working out, to training. And then just not knowing what I'm doing, we just had a high school football coach open the weight room and help us out with some BFS stuff, the old school, bigger, faster, stronger program. And as I trained more consistently and trained harder, I got bigger, I got stronger, I got faster, and I became a more effective player. I was a Division III football player, and that was about maximizing what I could do. But it all goes back to the hard work that I put in because I don't think I could even play at that level if I didn't train. So that's how I fell in love with training. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I loved whatever it was. I felt empowered by it. But I grew up in a coach's house. My stepdad is a career high school coach. And so I've always known that I wanted to be around athletics. I wanted to coach. But I didn't know if I wanted to be a football coach. At the college level, at the high school level, I always thought I'd go back home and coach home. But I fell in love with the next level of seriousness of football in college, like, more film, more tactics, better coaching, more resources. So I'm like, all right, do I want to be a high school coach or do I want to be a college coach? And then we had a strength coach, and I fell in love with that process even more. I'm like, holy crap, you can do this for a living. And so I told myself that I would take the first coaching job I got. And so first coaching job I got offered was to be an assistant strength coach at the University of Vermont for $10,000 and no benefits. And that was after, volunteering and doing some stuff in undergrad. And I showed up to do that, and I absolutely loved it, and I never turned around. Vermont was a great experience for me because it was a non-football environment. Hockey, lacrosse, soccer, basketball, skiing, track, field hockey, just you'd be exposed to all kinds of stuff that you'd never been around before. But I knew I wanted to get back into football, and that's what led me to the Citadel and then Kennesaw here at Navy. But it all comes back to watching Rocky, and being influenced by coaches growing up.
How is it, to navigate the space, taking a job, your first job at Vermont for $10,000, no benefits. Then you kind of work your way up, you get to the Citadel, then you go to Kennesaw, then now you're at Naval Academy. A lot of our listeners are coming from the European side and don't understand, what it's like for a strength and conditioning coach to kind of figure out the path in the collegiate level to move their way up and work their way to get to a position to where you kind of get a little bit financially stable and kind of can now breathe a little bit and feel a little more comfortable. So how was it to navigate it, and what were those struggles like for you?
Well, ignorance is bliss, I think. If you're just in hustle mode, you're just in hustle mode. And all you're worried about is paying bills and eating, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that when I was 21, 22 years old, I had this grand plan on all that I wanted to be, that I knew what my road was going to be. I just knew that I really liked to coach and I wanted to do it. And I wanted to do it, become the best I could do, and see where that road took me. But, I had people in my life who care about me who are like, hey, I don't think that this is right for you. This is not a great way to start financially in your life. But it's not that I didn't care about what they had to say. It's just that I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I just went and did it. So, what it comes down to is you knew that you had a steady paycheck, even if it was only like, a couple $100 a month. You had that, and you knew what else you needed to make based on your budget sheet. And you went out and you made that money. So you personal train, you stock shelves, you do this, you do that. But you navigate all that side hustle around the primary goal, which is working with the college kids. So I just knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted, and I liked what I was doing, and I felt like I was growing and learning and having some type of an impact. And so I just went about my business. And so I'd wake up early and I would do personal training, then I would train teams all day, and then I would train club teams at night, personal train late at night, wake up and do it again. And I just wanted to do it. So I did it. It's anybody who's an entrepreneur or anybody who's doubled down on themselves knows that if you want to make something, you got to go put your big boy pants on, your boots on, you got to go to work and get it done. And so I take a lot of pride in my journey, but it wasn't like I was waking up every morning and be like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Oh my God, how am I going to do this? Oh my God, how I had an idea and I went about doing it. So if people don't like to work hard, they probably wouldn't have made it. But if they cared about what they were doing, they were going to work hard. Anybody can make it. You just got to prioritize and execute. I wasn't eating organic food back then. I'll tell you that. I didn't have nice seats on the bed. I didn't have cable TV, but my life was built around something else. And that's just what I just focused on.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a time period that doesn't fully, I wouldn't say they don't know hard work, but if you look back at, when you first started in strength and conditioning, even for your time period when you were playing, like you talk about hard work, like that's kind of the hard nosed football, go to work, show up every day
Yeah.
type stuff. But now you look at, the athletes nowadays, what has been some of the, the biggest changes and some of the stuff that you kind of have to implement for your athletes and kind of preach on every day that you kind of see from when you first started to like now? What are the big differences?
Well, I think it's a great question. Kids are different, but kids are still kids, right? And I work with the best kids that you could find. I work with people out of school. Just a little background on Navy, like these kids, this is an Ivy League education. It's not an Ivy League school, but it's the equivalent of an Ivy League education. They live a cadet, midshipman, military lifestyle, and they have 5 years commitment to the Navy and the Marine Corps upon graduation. And then they play, FBS football in the American Athletic Conference. Like, you don't come here unless you've got something special, right? They're incredible young men. They come from good, strong families. And they do just remarkable things. And that's been generations before them here as well. But they're still kids. Like they're still 18 to 22 years old. They don't want to be the best version of themselves every day. They still need a kick in the ass. They need to be held accountable. And as adults, it's our responsibility to know what they need and demand that they do what they are required to do. That's our job as parents, as coaches, as teachers, as leaders, is to have had an experience for ourselves, to have learned from our experiences, and to help people navigate their own experiences. The term coach, Jim Tressel talks about this in his book, The Winner's Manual. It says the term coach is founded in stagecoaches. And back in the day, you used to hire people to bring you from point A to point B because you couldn't get from where you were to where you wanted to go by yourself because you had to navigate nature, you had to navigate rivers, you had to navigate wildlife, right? So you hired people to bring you. That's what the stagecoach was. They brought you from where you were to where you wanted to be in a way that you could not do on your own. And that's what a coach's job is. A coach's job is to have an experience, right? Have a set of beliefs, continue to learn and grow young men or young women to get from where they are to where we all know that they need to be. And they don't know how to do it. They don't because they're kids, right? Now, some people know better than others. Some people are more disciplined than others. Some people understand a little bit better than others. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to bat 1,000, right? And so they need people like us to guide them through it. So, we are in the why generation where kids need to know why. And I think it's important to communicate standards and expectations. Two parts of that why thing. Number one is if you can't tell a kid why they're doing something, you shouldn't be telling them to do it at all. So there should always be an answer as to why you're back squatting versus front squatting or sprinting 20 yards versus 30 yards or doing this versus that. If you can't answer that question, you ain't getting business coaching, right? So you should always be able to tell a kid why. But just because a kid knows the why doesn't mean they're going to like the why. And it's not your responsibility to make them like the why. It's just to make them know it, right? So not everybody's going to want to run repeated sprints. Not everyone's going to run push prowlers or run 300-yard shuttles or back squat versus front squat. But your job to get them from where they are to where they need to be the best way you know how. And so if they know it and they don't like it, tough cookies, baby. We got to suck it up, buttercup. We got to go to work, right? And that's where I think there's a little bit of a disconnect is that we think as leaders that as long as the people who we're leading know the why, they're going to automatically buy in. That ain't the case. At some point, there's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a disconnect, and they're not going to like it. You need to do your best to narrow those gaps or build those bridges and make them understand. But if they don't like it, you got to find a way to motivate and inspire and get them to get on the line and go again because it's your job to know where they need to go, and you got to get them there. So what are kids now versus then? They're still kids, but we got to be creative in how we communicate. We got to be creative in the energy that we inject into them, and the energy that we create with our environment, the competitions we provide, the feedback we give using technology if we have it, and knowing that kids are a little bit more visual, they're used to getting a little bit more stimulus, and finding ways to use that in the training environment to motivate and inspire. So they're not as good at being told to run faster. They're being told, hey, you ran a 1.1. I need you to run a sub 1.1 on this fly time, right? And being creative with our way to demand it.
Speaking
Yeah.
speaking to that, how is your philosophy on culture kind of developed since like from you first entering the strength and conditioning community to now?
Well, I'd say that a lot of my foundational core beliefs are the same. Unity, discipline, commitment, community. Those things are the same. But as I've grown, I've realized that, it's always culture first, but you've got to have a great blend of culture and training. And your training can't suffer as a result of pushing culture. So you could say, we're going to do all this hard training because it's cultural. That's great. And I believe that kids should do things that are really hard because when you persevere through difficulty, you believe more in yourself. You grow a confidence. And when you persevere through difficulty with a group, you have that shared struggle and that creates unity within your group. I think all that stuff is invaluable, right? But you can find ways to be productive in your training so as carry over to your sport, right? So we can't just have people go 5 back, 5 back, 5 back, 5 back, 5 back, and have them go as hard as they can just to build up some burn in the legs, see how hard they finish when the highest speed they got is 9 miles an hour. And then they're going to go play football at 15 to 22 miles an hour. And they're going to yank hamstrings and groins and hip flexors. You've got to find a way to blend difficult training creating those cultural experiences and having a cultural identity. And it's got to be blended really well with sound functional training that you can justify, progress, and will ultimately lead to the things which are important, which is higher levels of output and being able to stay healthy. So what I've grown is how can I find ways to develop culture and develop those shared experiences but do it in a way that is going to be productive to keeping them healthy on the field, particularly in early August. We got to go to camp and try to get through camp with minimal injuries. But that's never at the expense of, the commitment and challenge them in a way that challenges their commitment. And so that's the real art of this thing, is how can you blend the art and the science? So whereas I used to be more of like, I'm going to find the hardest things for you guys to do. Now I'll find the hardest, but most productive things for them to do. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it definitely does. I think I get challenged with that myself, where obviously there's the new school of thought where, well, not even new school of thought, but strength coaches are kind of coming into knowing that there's things that we obviously shouldn't be doing. But I
Mm-hmm.
still kind of grew up on that, do 300-yard shuttles and do 100-yard, just like, 100-yard gassers and just mindless stuff. But I think we can all say that there was merit there. there
Yeah,
was there
yeah.
was still a little bit of merit there in that perseverance, and may not, just like you said, where it may not always be the best thing to do at that point in time.
But if
But
it's
yeah,
the
you
best
can kind of speak more
done,
to it. Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree. And I'm never going to let this leave like the core of my coaching. And so I'll tell this story, and I love telling this story, and I tell it all the time. When I was at Kennesaw State, our head coach was blood and guts, fire and brimstone, and there's a reason why we won a lot of games. He was a phenomenal head coach, phenomenal leader, and he demanded a ton and held his kids accountable. And I loved being his lieutenant for that. When we would run mat drills, right? County fair, 6 stations, minimal of what that was brought a direct correlation to their ability to perform on the football field. Minimal. The metrics you get, because we run it with GPS, and those metrics don't correlate to practice, right? But we would do those, and we would demand of these kids that they step outside themselves and learn that they're capable of more, right? And I've always bought into that, and I still do, and we still do them here. But the story I'm going to tell is, 2018, we played a home playoff game against Wofford. And we won that game 13-10, and we were a top 4 team that year in FCS football. And we played Wofford, who had become, a reputational rival. They had a great culture. They ran the option just like we did. It's just old school, hard nosed, disciplined, tough program. Wofford came in. We played on a rainy, crappy day in December, and we beat that team 13-10. And our team was used to scoring 40, 50 points a game. And it was gnarly. And our inside linebacker was a 5th-year senior, Anthony Gore Jr. I love the kid to this day. He's coaching ball now. He had like 13 tackles, 4.5 for a loss, and he forced a fumble that we recovered to kick the field goal to win. That's the day that you tell your kids about. You know what I mean? That's the type. So after the game, I told him, "Hey, Ant, I love you, man. Congratulations. That was amazing." He goes, "Hey, coach, that's coach's runs, right? That goes right." He drew strength and power from the difficulty that we put him through those mat drills and those 4-quarter drills. So I'll never forget that he drew strength in hard moments from the hard things that he went through in the offseason. Metrics aside, he went through some shit that made him better as a man, and he used that when we needed it the most. So that's why I don't judge what people do, as long as it's doing what they feel as the leader of that team in that moment is what that group needs, right? And so if you run 300-yard shuttles, you run gassers, you do mat drills, party on, man. If it's giving you the results that you need, you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then you're winning, right? Now, what I challenge is if you do those things and you're getting to the point where you have a lot of buy-in and the kids have toughened up, but you have a rash of injuries that you think a different type of training modality will help fix, then you need to be able to pivot there eventually. And you need to do things that will keep the kids healthy, but that's secondary. You got to get them to work hard and be bought in first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this, the buy-in and like doing things, that work for you. Who are some of the coaches that you're looking up to and learning from, and that have helped you grow throughout this time period to get you to the point that you're at now?
Yeah, let's talk about old and new. Okay, I don't run my internship curriculum anymore. Luckily, I have an assistant who does a great job. One thing that I demand in my internship curriculum is that these young cats learn the OGs, right? And they learn the OGs from NFL, college, private, the people that came up in the earlier ages of strength and conditioning that paved the road to where we are now. And a lot of them are out of the game, right? But like it starts with people like Mike Boyle, like Joe DeFranco, like Dave Tate, all the people that were pumping info out on T Nation back in the day, on Elite FTS, these legendary legends in the field, the guys who really paved the way, like Joe Ken, who created the tier system, Bill Clark, who did 5x5 back with the Baltimore Colts back in the day, the people who influenced, back when they weren't getting paid to do it or when they were getting paid pennies to do it. I want all these people to learn from those, and those books are just as valuable to read now as they were. You should read Advances in Functional Training from Mike Boyle. You should read The Tier System by Joe Ken. Those concepts will never die. And then, my eyes really opened when I started working for Donnell Boucher. Donnell was a longtime strength coach at the Citadel. He works for Play now. An incredible mentor and my best friend. He officiated my wedding. My wife and I still go to Charleston once a year to visit him and his wife. But, he was an incredible influence to me and so many others. And I think that he was very impactful in bringing strength and conditioning onto social media and sharing a lot of what goes on. And that's where a lot of his reputation was founded. And then in that 08 to 12, 13, 14, you had Kaz Kazadi and what he was doing at Baylor, while Pat Ivan was doing at Missouri, and growing programs. They had departments with 5 overall strength coaches to growing departments of 20, including PTs and massage therapists, and sports psych and nutritionists. Those people need to be commemorated and idolized for their contributions to our field. Other people I've learned from along the way, people that whether they know that they've influenced me or not, but Brett Huth or Huth, I don't know how to say his name. He's at Texas State now. He does great stuff. If you follow him on social media, Joey G, his stuff that he's got going on at FAU is beyond, I think, comparison. Ryan Russell was at Auburn for a long time, but he's at Missouri right now. He does an incredible job. I visited him when he was at Auburn, when I was at Kennesaw, because that's only 90 minutes away. So Ryan Russell was an incredible influence to me. Ryan Russell, Coach Russell, he emailed me when I was an assistant at the Citadel. Says, "Hey, Coach, I'll be in town. I was hoping to come check out a workout." He was on his midsummer vacation with his wife, and he came in and spent 2 full days with our staff, just watching, learning, observing, giving us feedback, taking feedback from us. We couldn't believe that this guy's the head strength coach at Auburn. You know what I mean? He's an SEC, Cam Newton, and he's at the Citadel. We had just gone freaking, 4-7. And he's learning from us. What an awesome show of humility. And then he was a tremendous host to me and my staff when we went and visited and learned from him. So he was awesome. But I think that the other guys that are really great are coming out of the Tommy Moffitt tree. So Coach Moffitt's at A&M now, but he was at LSU for 20 years. You're pretty good if you're the head strength coach at LSU for that long, for that many coaches. He was Saban, then he was Les Miles, and then he was all the way through the raspy dude, like Ed Ogeron. He worked for all those coaches. So you got to learn from Coach Moffitt. And then his number one disciple is Paul Jackson, who was at Ole Miss for a long time. And Coach Jackson, I think, might be the best in the game right now. So I threw a lot of names out there. Finding those people on social media, if you're not finding them being interviewed on podcasts, then you're not asking yourself how to be the best you can possibly be. But you got to pay homage to those who came before us. Those guys were training. You listen to Coach Marotti and Coach Bayless. They built Ohio State and Florida, and Notre Dame. And those guys, when they were starting as strength coaches, they were GAs, training 20 teams, including the football team, and then going home, living in a 1-room roach, apartment, and then coming back and doing it again. And now they're making $1 million, So you got to pay homage back to the OGs, and you got to read those books, and you got to read those old articles, and then you got to get on social media and follow productive people and learn. I went long on that. I'm sorry, but if you're not being influenced by people, you're a fool.
No, I mean, that's super important, especially for a lot of our listeners, hearing about some of the OGs, because a lot of times people get stuck in who's popular now. right? But
Mhm.
obviously these people had to learn from somebody before. What have you taken, from some of these guys that you mentioned and kind of implemented into your own training programs and use for yourself to kind of continue to be successful like you are now?
Something that I've learned, because Coach Joey down at FAU, he's great at answering. I met him when he was at Ole Miss working for Coach Jackson, so I've had a relationship with him back now a number of years. But he does a great job answering questions that I throw at him, whether I text him or hit him up on Instagram. And I watch his guys run, and I'm like, you run the piss out of your kids. And what I've taken from him is that if you want to be ready for camp, you need to be ready for 125% of your first practice, right? And so there is a major concept that has a lot of merit in this game, and that's minimal effective dose. And that is given, it's a medical term where you give just enough medicine to cure the disease. You don't overdose and create an immunity to the medicine, right? But like you got to give enough dosage to get kids through practice. And if you know that your first practice on August 1st is going to be 23 periods, it's going to go 2 hours and 25 minutes, including pre and post practice walkthrough, right? And they're going to cover 5,000 to 8,000 yards depending on position. But you ain't covered 8,000 yards in a training session. These kids are going to get hurt on day 2, day 3, and that's when the soft tissue is going to come in. And so what Coach Joey G has taught me directly and indirectly is that more is better if you can handle it, right? More is better if you can handle it. And so you want to get these guys ready, you got to get them ready for more. But now you got to do it the right way. You got to ramp into it. But by mid-July, these boys better be running 5, 6, 7, 8,000 yards if that's what they're going to be demanding. And coach, that's why I got away from 300-yard shuttles, because I would get my guys ready fitness-wise, the way their heart's pumping and all that stuff, doing 6 300-yard shuttles. We run it on a 50-yard course, but you run 6 of those and your legs and your lungs you've only covered 1,800 yards, you know? So yeah, you got garbage yards and they're walking around in between. You covered, and a day like that, you lucky with a couple of agility drills and a good warm up cover 4, maybe 5,000 yards. That's good for your big boys. Your wideouts, running back, safeties, they might be covering 6, 7, 8,000 yards and they ain't ready to do it. And that's where we would see day 3 hamstring strains. And so when I said, okay, if I need to cover 5, 6,000 yards, then we need to do something that is different. It's going to build up a little bit differently in the legs. And that's where tempo runs became a thing. Even though I think it's boring and lame and it doesn't challenge you as culturally, you find ways to make it demanding culturally. Physically, yeah. Mentally, yes. But all of a sudden, now your legs are able to handle 7,000 yards. And so I learned from Coach G, like more is better if you can handle it. And it seems to me he's cracked the code. And when I hired one of his assistants, he doesn't work for me anymore, but those guys, they're all about it now. They run their guys so much. It seems like their injury report is very, very manageable. And that's really what we're trying to do, is protect our kids for the first 2 weeks of camp.
How do what are you doing to kind of track and know when guys are kind of ready for camp, especially now at the Naval Academy, because it's a little bit different, like where these guys are, I saw in one of your videos where these kids are like swimming underwater for a certain amount of time, and like you got to deal with that too,
Yeah.
because they're training like they're in the Navy, right? But
Yep.
they're also still playing football. So how are you getting them ready for camp, and like also the mental aspect of it too, like getting these guys to just dial in and lock in? Because I know playing against those Navy guys, they're different. You know what I mean? Especially when you guys were in that triple option, even at Citadel, you got there cutting people all the time. Like, it sucked to play against y'all. I hated it, right? Especially playing safety.
Damn right.
You got those tackles downfield trying to cut you. I hated it. But like, how do you know these guys are ready?
Well, so the first part is this: we're lucky enough to have catapult, right? So we got 72 catapult units, and we had a full spring ball, and we know what our practices are going to cost our kids, right? Our spring ball is 15 full practices, so I could say safely that the only difference between spring practice and fall practice is that you have consecutive days in the fall versus a day off in every practice in the spring, which is something you can only control so much. But I know that my wideouts, tight ends, and running backs are going to run a ton. I know that my linebackers are pretty consistent, and then my O and D line are pretty manageable. So I know from metrics what they kind of need in order to be ready for camp. Right. When it comes to the Navy, so I don't want to get this twisted. They're not waking up at 5 a.m. and running miles and doing push-ups and sit-ups every day. Their job is to be a midshipman through academics and athletics. And athletics fills what they call their physical mission, right? So a physical mission for a regular midshipman who's not a student athlete is to be engaged in their own physical fitness or to have, brigade led physical fitness. Our kids, their physical mission is being varsity athletes. Twice a year, they do need to take their PRT, the physical readiness test, and our skills and combos need to be able to run a mile and a half in under 10:30. Our bigs can bike a version of that, and they got to be able to do a certain amount of push-ups, and they got to be able to hold a plank. I build that into our training so it does not distract us too much. Like we did it right before we broke for our midsummer break. And now we put that shit to bed until the spring. Now they got to be able to do that. And some kids who know that they're bad at it, they got to do some extra training on their own. And that is their burden, right? I am not going to cater to the difficulty of my kids' lives. We are going to weaponize our experience. Our kids' lives is more demanding than the average college student athlete. They march to breakfast, they march to lunch, they march to dinner, they sleep in twin-sized beds elevated off the ground because it simulates a ship. They take incredible academic rigor, but I am not going to let that be their Achilles heel. I'm not going to let them act like they can't be college football players because they've got demand somewhere else. Hell no. We are going to make that what makes us different and better. Now, at the same time, I have to be understanding that their cup will runneth over, right? And I cannot put them in a spot where they are overtrained. I need to know that the first week of class is very, very demanding on these kids, right? So I have to manage my training room appropriately. I have to have a good coach's eye. Metrics aside, I have to have a coach's eye. I have to have a relationship with kids to know when things are crazy. So our kids take 6-week exams, 12-week exams, and final exams. Our kids are crushed on 6 weeks and 12-week exams, right? You guys know midterms, right? Well, just imagine that twice, right?
Sheesh.
And those midterms are built in at random parts of their day because it can't interrupt the rest of their curriculum. So I know when that's happening, I need to accommodate for that in my training. That's not me making their life easy. That's me using my brain to keep our kids in the right place so they can be successful academically and they can be successful physically. So I need to know what's going on. And the best thing for me is to trust our kids and trust the coaches who have been here longer than me and then make good decisions and adjustments as I see things going, whether they're going well or going poorly. Swim is gnarly, man. Like they're going to the Navy, the Marine Corps. Both those things have to do with water. And you guys played college ball. I ain't gonna say it anyway. I can't. Not all these kids can swim great. All right. I'm sure you had teammates that couldn't swim. Okay. And so our kids, if they're bad in the pool, they have to train in the pool because they're gonna go lead sailors and Marines after this, and they need to be competent in that. And so I'm not giving them the out, and I've actually upped the ante on making sure that these kids are going to their remedial swim classes so they can get on track and they can graduate on time based on their swim requirements. I don't like it. I try to work with our extended staff at the academy, teach swim to adjust their days with my days. But at the end of the day, if they can't swim, they can't serve. And these kids are going to go serve, and they'll be active members of our military, and they got to be able to uphold their end of the bargain. So, that thing I posted the other day, guys, that's 15 meters underwater swim with no kickoff. They're in the middle of the pool. They throw their legs up in the air and they swim down and they got to go 15 meters in full uniform. This shit's hard. I wouldn't be able to do it, right? But that's something they came here to do and they got to be able to do it. Not all of our kids have these great aspirations to become, admirals in the Navy or generals in the Marine Corps, but some want to come in and they want to be Navy SEALs and they want to be recon Marines and they want to fly jets and they want to do some cool shit. Those are the kids that got that stuff on their own. It's the kids who came here for the academics and the football. Those are the ones that we got to prod into the water to make sure that they're doing their thing. But if they don't handle their business, it's going to catch up to them. Like if they dog it and they find a way to evade freshman, sophomore swim, now they're doing freshman, sophomore swim as juniors and seniors, and it's going to be really hard for them to graduate on time. And that's not okay, right? So we got to make sure that they're holding up their end of the bargain. And I love that for us. I love it. I love it. I love the fact that these kids have hard lives. Not enough people do hard things. You guys saw Tom Brady's always like, I hope people play football because football is hard. I hope people play football at the service academy because it makes you a better man, right? because it's hard. And it's harder here than everywhere else, but ain't no excuse not to win. And we got to find a way to get that done.
Coach got me ready to run through a brick wall, suit up real quick. Yeah, hear them talk just like this. Like you said, like a lot of our teammates, coming into college didn't know how to swim and whatnot, and balancing that in. I'm lucky that I came from two parents that were in the Navy, so I learned how to swim
Hell yeah.
very early on. And then also growing up in Florida, being around water all the time, they're like, "Yo, we don't want you at a predicament to where you can drown." But what are some struggles that you go through, on a daily basis? Just you yourself as a strength and conditioning and a head strength and conditioning coach, at the top level. What are some struggles that you face?
Well, Navy presents its own challenges. The military side, we have a really inflated roster. We'll have 189 for camp. For various reasons, we're able to do that. I'm not going to get into that today. But we have a very limited amount of time to work with the kids. So during the school year, I train them in one big group. So you got your injured and modified guys come in at their own time, and that would be anywhere between 5 and 15 guys, because it could be a short-term ankle or hamstring, it could be a long-term ACL repair. But those guys train in their own small group, and then you'll have 150 guys in the weight room at one time. Now I got 5 staff, so I got the resources, the facility, and the people to do it. But you talking about you got 2 hours and 15 minutes to train 180 kids, like that you got to be buckled up and ready to go on that, because obviously you got freshman through senior and all the stuff you got to accommodate. So that's a big challenge. But when it comes down to it, is we all put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do a great job. I put a lot of pressure on myself to serve the head coach who had enough faith in me to hire me, and I want to deliver on the promises that I made in my hiring process. Say, I'm gonna get these kids fit, fast, and tough, and we're gonna go beat Army, right? Which I'm 0 for 1 on. But I want to make sure that I am doing what I can for the person who put his faith in me, who pays me a good paycheck and allows me to do what I love for a living. I want to serve him and other coaches and give them what they need so they can go out there and kick ass and provide for their own personal ambition and to put food on their family's plate, right? But these kids deserve our best, right? We're training 18 to 22-year-old men and super formative time in their life. And we can be great servants to them, and we can teach them great lessons. So I owe these kids the very best, right? And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure I'm doing a great job for the coaches that I work for and the kids that work underneath me, right? I want to serve them, and they deserve. And these kids, every kid I've coached, I've loved because they're mine, right? And I got relationships with the kids at Kennesaw that I cherish. But these kids at Navy, like, they live a hard life and they're committed to something after this and something special, and they deserve the best from me. And so I make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward every day for these young men. They deserve it. And we gotta find a way to win, man. We gotta find a way to win. So, like, there's the personal side and there's the professional side. The personal side is I gotta find a way to win so I can keep this job, right? And I can create a life for me and my family that we want, right? And actually, that's the business side. The business side is I gotta do right so we go win. The personal side is I wanna lead these young men and give them all that they deserve. But we can't hide from the business side that if we're not being creative and we're not finding ways to solve problems, we're not going to win games. I'm going to get my ass fired. So there's that motivation every day, right? 5 and 7 ain't going to cut it. Lost to both academies. That ain't going to cut it. We lost to Army and we were on the 2-yard line going in, ready to tie the game. The strength coach, if that don't put a knife in your gut, I don't know what will. So I got that stuff driving me. But I want to serve our kids and I want to do great for the people that have faith in me.
That's a big game, Navy Army. That's a classic right there.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's amazing, and it's 22 kids on the field every play, and every one of them are giving everything they got. The feeling of that game is pretty spectacular. So I'm hoping, I can get that thing flipped this next year, and we can celebrate instead of mourn. I'd like to motivate by trying to win again, as opposed to motivate by saying, "Hey, we got our ass kicked 2 years in a row. Right? We ain't having a third." By ass kicked, we mean every game comes down to the last inch. Every year.
Every year that game comes.
Every year. It
Yes.
don't matter if we're an 11-win team and they're a 2-win team or vice versa. That thing's coming down to the last couple plays. That's just the truth. Very rarely is there a decisive game. It's wild. It's wild.
Coach, if you look back at 16, 17-year-old Coach Jim, what would be some advice you would give him now, or some words you would say to him?
You got to find a mentor who's going to teach you about the professional side of life. Okay, so I went to a military school, not in a service academy, but I went to a military school in the middle of nowhere, Vermont. And when I got out, it was time for me to go be a college kid, right? Which people show that they do that 18 to 22. I did it 22 to 24, right? So I was not socially responsible. Now, I worked my balls off and I hustled and I wasn't late, right? And I worked hard to build my craft and serve those kids that I coached. But I was burning the candles at both ends. I was not a good role model in terms of like how I acted, the type of relationships that I built. I was unprofessional. I was irresponsible. And it would have led to a major stagnation in my career had I not gone to work for Donnell at the Citadel, where I learned where there's another layer to this profession, which is the professional side of it, right? It's like the organization, the management, the leadership, right? But also how that impacts you as a human being and how you can do a better job with your life by becoming more organized and becoming more professional and creating better relationships. Not that you're not going to make mistakes, but, young Coach Jim, I said the wrong things to the wrong people. It was inappropriate. I was in the wrong bars at the wrong nights. I tell my staff during our orientation, our interns, it's like, hey, you out there cutting it up on Saturday night in Annapolis, I hope you're having a great time. But if you're in a bar and there's 30 athletes and there's 2 coaches, you're in the wrong bar, right? You got to say, close your tab, wave, and get out, right? That's not what I was like when I was 22. And I wish I had a little bit more guidance when I was young, and I'm lucky I got out of it alive. So, the same thing goes to if you're cutting it up at a pub and there's 30 coaches and 2 athletes, you don't got to leave. They can leave, right? You get your spot when you're in that spot. But like being socially responsible and treating this industry as more of just like it used to be about, clanging and banging, loud music, competition, and that stuff hasn't left me. But how you organize management and lead and the role and how you model things, that's what I wish I did better. But that's part of your growth. That's part of your personal journey. And that's where we were. And I'm lucky enough that I found a mentor. I bought into him and his ways. And then I adapted my own way off his, and I've been able to climb since. Not that I haven't made a million mistakes since then, but I'm not making the same mistakes at 36 as I did at 22, 23, 24.
Yeah, and especially for
There's no,
your
you still have that yin
intern.
and that yang
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
of
sure.
like
Yeah.
the because I still have that in me too, and I think Coop has it like every football player that's come from American football and now gets into sports performance, especially like in our era, is just like music's gonna be loud. I'll be yelling for no fucking reason, but but the program will there'll be merit to the program. There will be value in the things that we're doing, and like nothing will be mindless and senseless. But yeah,
Yep.
that yin and that yang.
And then building that out from a department standpoint, like you would go into any athletics department and you're going to have the business department, you're going to have the marketing department, you're going to have the media department, you're going to have that sports medicine, you're going to have strength and conditioning, and then you have all of your teams. You want to run a department that is like that the athletic director respects and points people to in terms of how you manage your business. Hey, these people are dependable, they're reliable, they create great services, they build great relationships. The kids speak highly of them, coaches speak highly of them. They know when to give and they know when to hold their ground. They do things above the line, and that takes thought outside of X's and O's and strength and conditioning. And that just takes time to build. It takes growth, it takes reading, it takes learning, it takes observing, it takes failing. And that's the stuff I learned from Donnell that I tried to carry into the rest of my
How is that
What's the
cohesion in all those departments there?
I work hard to make sure it goes well, and I personally have had good relationships interdepartmentally everywhere I've been. Some better than others, and some like say I've got a good relationship with sports medicine. Maybe not me and not every athletic trainer vibe, but departmentally we are aligned and we work well together. But friction often comes because people are stupid. And if you just take a breath and have a conversation, you can eliminate friction. Um, and yeah, you got to stand up for what's important to you and your department. But there's areas of your own stubbornness that has to give way to other people. So like you can't, you can't be so gung ho about you being the most important show in town that you don't give anybody the respect that they deserve because everybody's trying to protect their 20 square feet. And you might have to give up 2 square feet so you can get 2 feet of the other people's. And that's really the best thing. That's where 2 plus 2 equals 5. But you got to defend what's important and to your core values and beliefs. But at the same time, you need to be open to learning and respecting other people's core beliefs and meshing with them where you can. And when you do that and you handle your business like a pro, that's when other departments respect you and are willing to work with you.
What's some key advice you're giving to your interns that potentially want to get to a point that you're at right now? You know what I mean? Like, what are you telling them?
So it starts with showing up on time, right? Presenting yourself well. So, it can't work all the time, but like, you want to wear school colors, you want to wear school brand. That is not always available. Not every school can give gear to the interns, right? And not every intern's got enough cash to go out there and buy a full Under Armour outfit, right? But you shouldn't be rolling into your first day at Navy wearing black, right? Because black is the color of our enemy, right? Because Army's Black Knights. You should at least have a white, gray, Navy, something on. You should have invested in something and then be like, hey, coach, listen, I ain't got no money. I only have 2 Navy pairs of shorts. I got black. Is that cool? And then so it starts by showing up on time, wearing the right thing. It's amazing what you can do in this world in every aspect of it. If you show up on time and wear the right thing, you do that, you're going to be okay. Right? So show up on time, wear the right thing. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Ask great questions, but make sure that you're doing your best to listen before you speak. And then when you get an assignment, do it early, right? And do it to the best of your ability. And then when someone coaches you on how to do it better, say thank you and then go do it better. Don't think that your first try was going to be your best thing, right? It's your first go through is probably not the final product, whether you think it is or not. And it might not be your first product, but you might have gone over this 3 times and then an experienced guy looked at it, ripped it apart and gave it back. It's like, well, that experienced guy knows more than you. So trust it, say thank you, apply it and go move forward. Buy into your mentor, buy into where you are, right? So you might come from an experience where you do a lot of Olympic weightlifting, but your first internship experience is at a place that does an Olympic weightlift. Right? It doesn't mean that when you become head strength coach, you don't have to do Olympic weightlifting, but you should be all in on the way that they do things so you learn the why behind that person. Right? So have enough humility to put your own experience aside and learn someone else's experience so you can make a mesh of the two. And you might at the end of that summer or winter, you might throw all that shit out and be like, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. I don't agree with it. That's fine. You try. Now you can go back to what you did and you probably have a better appreciation for what you did. Right? But most likely you're going to take things from everybody, something from everybody, and you're going to be able to apply those principles. Right? So show up on time, wear the right thing, buy into your system, whatever system it is, right? And then over time, create your own. You need to be a voracious reader. You need to be a reader of the X's and O's of the game, meaning you should be reading Boyle, you should be reading all the Russian texts, you should be reading the speed stuff, you should be reading all of it, man. Like you should be reading Tri-Faith. You should be reading all of it, right? But don't forget, you should be reading about business management, leadership, organization. That's the stuff that's really inspiring, right? Like read Malcolm Gladwell, read Jim Collins. Get on Audible and get those free books and listen to all the books that are gonna somehow change the way you think or inspire you to lead a different way. Get a membership to the local library and do things in a way that you can read outside the box so you can start expanding your views. Because, you start in strength and conditioning like in trench warfare, where all you're doing is popping your eyes like 2 inches out of the trench. And then you need to be able to step outside the trench and see left and right, not just forward and back, right? And then eventually you got to be able to fly the drone or fly the helicopter. You got to be able to see the whole battlefield. And the only way to do that is to challenge your state of thinking. And that's where those other books and those articles and that stuff comes in. So don't isolate yourself to the X's and O's, but make sure that you're learning that as well. But you got to be buying in to thinking differently. And then if you're at a place that's fortunate enough to have sports science, dive in and learn as much as you can about the sports science, because that could be an X factor for you. Learn catapult, learn force plates, learn vault, learn timing gates, learn the value of sports science, but then be ready to do all that shit without any of it. Right? Because if you get your first opportunity to go work at a Division II school that's got 2 coaches, you're going to train 9 teams and assist with 2 others, right? But you ain't got no sports science. There's no excuse not to get those guys better. So the last thing you want to do is roll into one of those schools and be like, oh, we don't have catapult. How are we supposed to know what these guys are doing? Oh, we don't have vault. How am I supposed to know their left right asymmetries? Like, that doesn't mean you can't get your boys better, right? So there's no excuse not to get better. But if you do have the opportunity to be at a place with a lot of resources, value it and learn a ton from it, but always be able to pivot away from it so you can coach anybody at any time, at any place with any resource.
Coach, I love it. I love it, man. But before we get out of here, we got our last segment of the day because I know you're a busy guy, right? We got our
All right.
60-second round. It's
Let's
one
do
word
it.
answers. It's 10 questions. Are you ready for it?
I'm going. Let's ride.
All right, here we go. 6 seconds on the clock. Favorite post-workout snack?
Core Power vanilla, and I'll have an argument about that with anybody. Yeah, Core Power vanilla. And if we have Uncrustables, I want an Uncrustable, and I want it not quite frozen, but I want the peanut butter cold.
Favorite sport?
Favorite sport, football. Right? I think I would have been best at hockey.
Dream vacation spot?
I want to go to Austria, and I want to live at the base of a mountain at a lake. I want to be on a dock, and I want to drink coffee in the morning looking at the water, and I want to drink beer at night, but cold, not the European weird warm beer, cold beer at night while I sit out there and look at this still lake in the middle of two green mountains.
Best athlete you've ever trained?
Marcus Blakely was the guy who won a slam dunk contest, playing basketball, won an NCAA slam dunk contest, playing for the University of Vermont. Freak athlete, and then Darnell Holland is the best football player I've coached. He had crazy legs, ran with his legs all over the place, but ran 2.43s at his pro day. Darnell Holland.
Best concert you ever been to?
Volpe live at Gramercy Theater in Manhattan, New York. Small European band. They've had their moment in the sun. They're still great. But my brother and I went to Manhattan for that night and saw their first American headline tour, heavy metal. Even though I'm more of a country music guy now, I was heavy metal back then, and that show blew my mind forever.
Favorite movie genre?
Drama. The Godfather is the best movie of all time.
Dream car?
Ram, Laramie, black, slightly lifted, not obnoxiously lifted. Black interior leather, all the bells and whistles. 2,500, not diesel though, because I'm not a real man. I just want a big truck.
Best gym you've ever been to?
That's a great one. The best weight room, the weight room that blew my mind the most when I saw it was when I saw Auburn's weight room connected directly to their indoor, and when I saw it in like 2013 or 14. Probably not the best weight room in America, but when I saw that, it was a Sorinex room directly connected to the turf. Locker room ran their nutrition station. I couldn't believe it. Ryan Russell ran a weight room that blew my mind, made me feel inferior. So that's probably not the best weight room in the world, but it was to me at that point.
And last one, would you rather be in an octagon with a gorilla, tiger, or a bear?
Gorilla, tiger, or bear? That's a terrible question. I'm gonna go bear because I could select different types of bear because you didn't put a premise on it. So I might be able to like play dead or something, but I'm not going against no grizzly. And a gorilla ripped my arms off and I would suffer. At least the tiger would kill me right away. So there's my answer, bear. And I would choose a soft baby bear. I choose a panda bear. He ain't gonna do nothing to me.
And that's it, Coach. We appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you for
Much
your time,
appreciated.
man. And can't wait to watch you guys this season. So thank you, Coach.
All right. I appreciate you guys having me on. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Keep doing great work.
Thank
Appreciate
you. And
it.
we're out.
All right. See you guys.